All right. Yes, welcome everyone. I want to welcome you to this sixth user experience design workshop. So this is the sixth time we're meeting ever since we started these user experience design workshops. So these workshops are, essentially meant to help you quick start your journey as a user experience designer, or if at all you're a creative, to help you start making UX, because user experience is the way to go these days. If at all you fail to make things easy for your users, then someone else will make them easy for them, and then they'll end up taking your clients or customers eventually. So as a creative or a business owner, or anyone that does anything, I urge you to start thinking UX by first and foremost thinking about the kind of things you're doing. And it's through this thinking that you realize that, one, you need to actually start delivering things that are usable, understandable, that are good for the environment. That if at all you're using certain materials to do certain specific things, you have to make sure that those materials are actually degradable, and they're actually good for the environment. So as a designer, you have to make user-friendly sort of like designs, but that are not only user-friendly but also they're environmentally friendly, if I may say. So as a designer, you have to think about that. Through that thinking that you will start getting to know how people think or feel. You'll start getting to know the kind of emotions you should be designing for. So the UX chefs, as I'll be taking you through, it's just a group of creatives that usually come together and discuss design related issues in society, and to also help people start their design careers in graphic design, motion design, web design, anything that has to do with design, essentially, because design usually it's one of the ways to express oneself, and it's one of the ways that businesses actually express themselves, so that they can show us what kind of value they can actually give us. So this right here is the agenda I'm going to be taking you through. So just sit tight so that I take you through these points, and then you get to ask questions about your experience design, and then we shall get to continue. So moving on, this right here is our agenda. So under this agenda, I'm going to be telling you about the UX chefs. I'll be telling you about the UX chefs weekly buffet, and then I'll be telling you about the UX chefs weekly workshop, and then I'll tell you about myself, and then I'll take you through the UX chefs hashtags, then the UX word, the UX tones, and then the UX chefs article of the week, the book of the week, and then most importantly, I want to give you an introduction to Figma, part two, because in our most recent workshop, the fifth workshop, I gave you an introduction to Figma, and it was just part one. So this is like part two. So make sure that you sit tight. At the end of this workshop, I'm going to be giving you an introduction to Figma. I want to be continuing from where I actually stopped. So you can check the description of this video, and then you'll get a link to that specific video where I took you through the first part of the introduction to Figma. So let's dive right in, guys. The first thing I want to take you through in this specific workshop is I want to tell you about actually the UX chefs, and then I'll tell you about myself. So the UX chefs, it's just a group of creatives. We usually meet here and there, either physically or virtually. And I think yesterday I met a creative from Nairobi, Kenya, and he's actually in the communities and the UX chefs community, and we met virtually, and he wanted me to take him through the fundamentals of Webflow, and what he needs to actually get started with Webflow. And we had a very fruitful discussion. I took him through what I'm actually going to take you through at the end how this works because I realized Webflow actually works quite well with Figma, and some designers are actually designing in Figma, and then you want to actually translate their designs into things that are actually interactable with, like things that others can actually interact with. For example, like landing pages, and others are actually creating portfolios, no, etc, etc. So, as UX chefs, we're here to actually help each other grow as designers, as creatives, so that we can actually improve career-wise, in our social lives, and so that we can actually become better individuals, because that's literally the essence of life. We're here to actually make others better by serving them. So as a UX chefs, we usually meet. We have creatives in the graphic design arena, web design, UI UX design, art, and software engineering. We actually open to all creatives. If at all you are a creative and you have a creative mind, you can actually join the group, and then you can start sharing ideas and asking questions. How can you start your career? Where can you find jobs? If at all you want to be a freelancer, how can you start? So we usually share this information. So always, just make sure you check out the UX chefs on LinkedIn or Twitter, and then make sure that you join the community. So moving on, I'm actually let me just introduce myself. I'm Rogers Mukaaya. I'm a product designer. I'm a user experience designer. I'm literally a digital designer. Actually, I love digital design, and every day of my life, I think I actually create something digital. Now, to make sure that people actually get to know what design is all about. Because as a software designer, I realized I went through a lot of hurdles, and I went through a lot of difficulties while becoming a designer. And to even just create this simple design you're actually looking at right now, I wouldn't actually be able to create this when I was actually starting out. I looked at things in a strange way, and I wished there was someone who would maybe take me through the basics, the literal basics, like something that you can literally start with without overcomplicating things, because there's so many terminologies in design, web development, and it's software engineering as a whole. There's so many terminologies, and once it comes to user experience design, there are so many terminologies now. You can find 15 terminologies in just one field, user experience design. So I realized that I need to be one of those people that come out and explain, the things that someone needs to understand before they even design. Like how can they start reasoning in a visual way? Because thinking actually differs. You can start thinking maybe in ways that will drive you towards certain results that are not creative. But as a creative, as someone who has to come up with visuals at the end, because as designers, even if you are a UX designer, even if you are a customer experience designer, you have to come. You have to be creative, and one of the ways that creatives express themselves is through sketching and coming up with visual outputs. And usually visual outputs actually start from sketching. And you realize that sketching has a lot of power because it's where ideas actually develop from. So as a designer, I look at sketching as maybe the starting point, where someone can actually start thinking of which type of designs do I want to finally put out there. So you realize that eventually from sketching, you can start thinking of lines, and then form, and then color, and then putting these properties together to form elements, to form components, and to form other things. So as a designer, I always think about it. How can I start from the minimum basics, so that I can now start analyzing how can I build onto these basics to make sure that I become a better individual. So I realized there's that gap, and that is why the UX chefs as a community exists, and we as a UX chefs, we usually come together and solve business problems. So from the community, we do have experts, and if at all there is work that is in the realm of design, we usually come out and then make sure that we tackle that work. So we usually form groups that usually help us to tackle these different issues here and there. So feel free to always reach us with any piece of work that is design related, so that we can help you out. So feel free to always reach out to us through our social media platforms, through our website, and then through our contacts. So moving on, I want to tell you about the UX Chefs Weekly Buffet. So the UX Chefs Weekly Buffet was just a way of making sure that all the information that we publish through our social media platforms on a weekly basis comes together, and then sort of like forms a newsletter or a publication that people can actually read at any time. We shall make sure that these publications are also on our website, so that people can actually go and read, so that they can enjoy. So we, as UX chefs, we make sure that we prepare small articles that within the hashtags I'm going to show you, and we call that information meals, because if I told you, eat a meal like on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and if I told you to make a combination of all those meals like on Saturday, usually on Saturday, like families gather and then have a buffet. So that's why we have our buffet. So to make sure that it combines all the meals. If at all you missed a specific meal on maybe Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, you can enjoy it on Saturday through the buffet. So that is why we have all these metaphors, to make sure that you enjoy the type of information we actually create for you. So that is why we have the UX Chefs. That is why we have the UX Chefs Weekly Buffet, which is our newsletter. And then we also have these hashtags. So for these hashtags, you realize that usually create information throughout the week, and you can follow these hashtags on all our social media platforms, so that you can always enjoy these meals. But don't worry, if at all you actually miss out on anything, we got you sorted with our weekly buffet. So moving on, these are hashtags, the UX Stones. The UX Stones is just a conversational way of sort of like representing dialogues, conversational dialogues that usually happen and people don't actually talk about them, because I realize that people usually converse like in the workplace. If at all you're given a gig by a client, usually converse with them, like usually interact with them, and there are always those conversations. If at all you're working with another designer, there's usually a conversation happening between the two of you. So I realized that those conversations can actually be put together to make sure that people who do not know about this field and are interested can actually get to know what type of real conversations actually usually happen within the field. It's like another way of learning through conversations, because of course there are these courses that have like these predefined ways of learning, but all of that usually gets boring. And I thought of this way of, how about we form maybe a user experience comic, sorry, a user experience design comic, yeah, sort of like the same thing, but then this comic is there to teach people about user experience design, or inform, or make people aware about the concepts, or the hurdles, or how user experience design is sort of like started, or how you can actually start, or what happens in the practice, or what people actually do, the tactics, the techniques, skills you need to actually make sure that you become a very good designer. So I'm going to take you through these hashtags and then we shall jump off and then join again, and then I'll take you through these other areas of our agenda. So let me just re-explain to you what the UX Tunes is. The UX Tunes is just, I think, the first user experience design comic. I realized comics exist, but to actually entertain and educate. So they are there to sort of like, give someone joy, but then sort of like enabling them to learn. So I thought of it. How can we also bring that ideology into user experience design or design in general? Because you realize that learning is not actually easy. It's not actually easy to watch a tutorial of 5 hours and finish it and remember. But if at all there's a comic maybe to help you remember the concepts or tactics, skills that you need, or what is happening, then maybe your mind can be sparked, like because if at all the information is very near and it's very short and you can consume it there and then spark your mind about something, and then it can help you to maybe solve a problem, a design problem. It can even help you get interested in the field, or it can help you unblock others. So you never know, because you never know what you can use information for. So that is why the UX Tunes is there. It's just a user experience design comic. So we also have this other hashtag, the UX word. The UX word is just the user experience word of the day. So we have a list of 300 words that we curated, and this list has words that have been used to describe user experience design as a field. So we usually pick a word every Tuesday and Thursday, and then we write something about that word in regards to user experience design, UI design, and design in general. So we also have another hashtag called the user experience, the UX Chef's Weekly Buffet. So this is the buffet as showing you here. This buffet, it's this one right here. So if at all you'd want to actually check out the buffet, just just search for this hashtag. So for this specific hashtag, the UX Chef's Weekly Buffet. So and this one is just a newsletter, and we actually publish it every Saturday. So if at all you're in the community, you will always get this newsletter every Saturday. So that was it for this session. Let's jump off and then join in for another session. All right. Welcome to the second session of our user experience design workshop. So for this second session, I'm going to be taking you through these user experience words of the week, because just like I told you in the first session, every Tuesday and Thursday, we usually pick a word from our list of 300 words, and then we write something around that word so that people can become aware of which specific words usually carry more power to explain to you what his experience is, because it is actually very easy for you to forget what you're actually supposed to be doing as a designer or as a creative, because it is usually very easy for you to come up with designs, like really fast designs, without thinking about the impact of your designs. For example, you might come up with a form that does not have the different states that show if at all a field is missing, if at all someone forgot a specific set of characters or maybe numbers. If at all someone input something wrong, you do not tell them. You wait until they have submitted the form somewhere and then they're about to finish and you want them. So if at all you do not add all these interactions, all this feedback, but you've designed a form, all you've done is to just design, but you've forgotten that someone is going to experience those issues once they're using that form. So through user experience design, you start to think about the impact, the way someone is going to use and most importantly, how they're going to feel. Because in my recent post, I wrote about emotions and their impact, or how physical objects, all the objects that we see with our visible eyes, have got a very great impact on how we shall feel after using them. So the first word is going to be purpose. Let's just visit this specific word here. So for this first word, purpose, you realize that one, you have to make sure that you design things that have got, sort of like value at the end of the day. As a designer, you have to make sure that like your designs come up with meaningful solutions at the end. But before that, you have to make sure that usually you have to spend quite some time understanding how your designs are going to be eventually used, so that you can actually find out, the kind of value or purpose they'll be bringing. Because if at all you do not invest time in finding out like what kind of problem you're solving as a startup or maybe as an individual, if at all you do not know how your designs are going to impact maybe your client or the startup you're working for, usually those designs, will be, left out, or they'll be ignored in that, like in the planning sort of like phase, or maybe when they're making decisions, where should they put their money, like in such scenarios. If at all you're not this kind of designer whole, usually, brings up discussions about, how the things you're designing are going to eventually impact the business that you're actually working for, or the client you want to actually get, then usually design is not given that much of value. And that is why startups usually like they usually fail to actually find reason to actually invest in design earlier on, because most of these startup owners, they don't usually have a creative background, or they don't like from maybe the design field. You might find out when the individual is from maybe business background, or maybe is from a law background, and so usually these people do not see the essence of design. So that is why they do not give that much purpose, or that much sort of like attention to what design can actually bring to the table. So, and as a result, most designers feel worthless. So that in that process of we do not think we need this. We do not think we need design at this stage. In that process, most designers actually feel worthless in terms of what they actually provide to the company in terms of design. But as a designer, my role is to remind you that do not feel overwhelmed by such by such sort of like thinking, or maybe like that mentality, because it's actually a common mentality among startups. If at all you're working for a startup, as a designer, you need to be patient first and foremost with yourself, and you need to invest a lot in yourself in terms of reading about your field and getting to know your core values. As a designer, you need to set your core values, and you need to make sure that you are always learning and improving, because through that you'll find out that there is more to actually there is more to design rather than just providing visuals. Like you realize that one, you're here to actually make sure that people's lives are actually better through design. So you realize that even if you're not actually working for a startup, you work for someone else or for someone else, and you make sure you provide the same solution and it will help someone. So you're not literally tied to a specific startup. You are someone meant to provide solutions that are meant to make people's lives better. wherever you are, whatever you're doing. So as a designer, I encourage you to always have that mentality, wherever you are. So through that, you'll find out that you've got more to actually live towards, rather than just making visuals for someone and then they actually pay you. So you realize that you're more valuable and you can actually provide more for the startup or the company, and then you'll even be able to move on with that self-esteem and actually work for for someone else and then provide the same value. So you can see design, it's the user experience design can actually impact you that way. If at all you're patient and you're willing to actually invest time in reading and getting to know about your field. So I encourage you to always do that. Moving on to the next word. The next word is actually fits. So the next word under our UX word, or the UX experience word of the day. In the previous week, that next word was actually fits. Now let's actually visit this word so that I can actually take you through the specific word. Let's just go there. So under this specific word, if I told you to actually visit this specific post and then read through, you realize that I was just trying to let you know of one, that as a designer, whatever you're coming up with, it needs to correlate with whoever you will provide it to. So no, this is actually very simple, because usually we fail as designers, we fail at understanding what does my client want, or what do the users want, or what does someone who is going to consume my poster or my UI design or anything that is consumed or used, or even a physical product, like how are they going to feel when they're using this specific product? Because usually if I told you to find out how they are going to feel, then you can actually work backwards and then make sure you come up with the UI elements that will make them feel that way, or you find the materials that will make them feel that way. So usually people actually just go find the materials, or they just go find the UIs, and then they give them to the users, and then they think they will make sure they find out by first of all giving them. That is actually very very wrong way, because eventually like whatever you're giving them won't fit. So you have to actually use the first way. You need to first of all find out, because it's through finding out the type of emotions or the type of feeling you want to eventually trigger. Because like today, like providing value is not like that difficult. Like everyone can actually provide value. You can find a designer that can design for you a very good design anywhere in the world right now. You don't have to move 1,000 kilometers, or like spend the entire night looking for a very good designer. No, designers are there. But right now, designers that can understand the kind of feelings to be triggered, or the kind of sort of like way to trigger specific feelings through studying behaviors of the users that will use these specific products. Other designers that will be yearned for today or even tomorrow, because these other steps of providing value will be automated, for example, by AI, because AI right now can help you come up with like the bare minimum, or even well polished designs, so that you can move on with just combining these designs and then eventually coming up with a product. So realize that this other process is going to be automated. Now we need designers that can engineer feelings through their designs. Yeah, that is where the trick is. And you can achieve this through studying behavior and being interested in finding out how do people feel in specific situations, in specific scenarios, so that you can design for them around, you design around that feeling, so that the product fits, the UI fits in that process. So that is what this forward is all about. And I encourage you to always have that mentality of what kind of feeling am I going to actually trigger? And then what can I use to actually trigger that specific feeling? What kind of colors? What kind of form input elements can I use? Will they be big, small? How will they react? You don't have to be rigid. You don't have to just pick a like a design system or a style guide like from nowhere and then just drop it in Figma and you just use it and then you just provide it to someone and then you be like, how would you feel now? No, like that won't work. Of course, they will tell you how they feel, but it's better to actually find out what has this individual been using, like what is their prior experience, so that I can actually maybe predict their next experience. That's like the next generational design that I think designers need to actually think about. Moving on to our next point. Our next point is going to be the UX twins, because just to rewind back in our agenda, I've taken you through the UX code. Now I'm going to take you through the UX twins, and the UX twins, just like I told you, the UX twins is just it's just a user experience design comic, and this comic so far has 20 episodes as speak, and we're actually going to add more episodes so that we create chapters and people will be able to read. You can get to know about user experience design by reading, or interacting with this specific comic. So in our last user experience design workshop, I took you through episodes from I think episode 14, 15, and then 16. So today I'm going to be taking you through episode 17 and 18. So let's jump in for episode 17. So for episode 17, let's just get there. So for episode 17, as you can see, we have James as a colleague or workmate, John, and today they're actually collaborating because as designers we have to collaborate with other designers, and I actually encourage you to collaborate because collaboration is very good. It will enable you to get to know what you do not know. That's like the most important part of collaboration. Otherwise, there are so many other benefits, but that's like the most important benefit because you don't, just like I told you, you don't know what you can ever, you don't know what you'll ever use any information you get for. You do not know. So always be open-minded and always collaborate. So John is asking James, James is asking John, how can I get value from user research? Because as designers, really ask ourselves, like, how can I get value from my user research? Like, how can I be encouraged or maybe motivated and realize that this is going to be we actually wrote more about this specific episode in our weekly article, and I'll be taking you through this specific weekly article. So just stick around until the end. So moving on, realize that James is asking John, how can I get like immediate value, like value that is going to propel me to continue doing user experience research, because it gets boring in the process for you to actually be doing something when you're not getting any visual results from what you're doing. So it puzzles you. So James asks, he asks John, how can I get value from this? And John tells them, which kind of value do you want? Because before you answer someone, you need to first of all find out. So James is like, he's like, I mean the visual results. I prefer working with some visuals in the process, because you realize that we as creatives, we usually get bored like from the theory, because usually research is more of like literature review and like analysis, figures, history, what happened where, what happened when, who said what. So usually we as creatives, you can get bored in all that theory and all that happens while carrying out research. So as as a creative, John is puzzled. He's like, how can I, get, these visual results? And then John tells him, you can actually, first and foremost, get visual hints from your research and then pin those visual hints where you can actually see them. Most especially a mood board is used. But for me, even right here where I'm seated, I have books. I do have scrapbooks, out of scrapbooks around. And I usually sketch. I usually put there, pieces of papers that I have gotten from places that I think that these pieces of information would be very useful to me. I usually write things when I'm away from home, and I bring them and I stick them in my sketchbook. I usually take screenshots on my phone, and if I'm able to print, I print out and then I stick somewhere in my scrapbook or sketchbook. Now, for you as a visual, as a creative, you also need these scrapbooks, sketchbooks, mood boards. I don't know how you can do it, but you can get a wall, maybe in your bedroom, or maybe in your office, or maybe even a whiteboard can work. Just throw visuals there, and then once you're moving around the office, you can look at these visuals, and then they can actually trigger you into doing something else or finding out something related to that specific visual. So in the process, you'll be triggered to carry out more research or even find out. So you realize that these visuals actually, there's a way they trigger our minds to actually react eventually. So as a designer, I encourage you to always do that. Moving on to the next episode, which is actually episode 18. John, who is actually our main character in this specific comic, and I think one morning he's actually puzzled while designing, because as designers, you can wake up one morning and you don't actually have energy to work or to do anything, and then you realize, like, how can I make people like the type of designs I'm actually working on? Because usually we get like burnouts, and then your energy levels or your creative juices get low, or they even get done sometimes, and you don't even feel like doing anything. And usually in that process, we come up with designs that are undesirable. And I realized that our users are not actually comfortable with those designs. So in the process, John asks himself, how can I trigger the right emotions with my designs? Because usually when someone rejects your design, that means it has triggered the wrong emotion. That is it. They have gotten like a bad feeling about it. And usually they don't tell you that, Peter, or maybe James, or anyone, Sarah, Jane, this design that you've made, it's making me feel bad. They can't tell you that, but they'll tell you that change color A, B, C, D, or maybe change the text, but they won't give you the real reason as to why they want you to change these things. It is because of the feeling, the emotions they get. So John wakes up one morning and they're like, how can I trigger the right emotions with my designs? Then he turns around and he thinks to himself, like, wait, how do I want my users to feel in the first place? Because just like I told you, you need to first of all find out how you want to know how you want your users to feel, and then you work backwards by finding out what makes them feel that way, what triggers such emotions. Now you can actually design for specific emotions that trigger anger, happiness, anger, hunger, happiness. You can trigger emotions to make people sleepy, to make people wake up. You can trigger emotions to make people even divorce. Yeah, sadly, you can trigger emotions to make people date. We have seen such applications like Tinder. I'm sure there are also some divorce applications, but we have seen applications that trigger the emotions of wanting to leave your home and going somewhere else to see what's happening there. Airbnb. We have seen applications that can make you hungry there and then. For example, food, these delivery applications for food. Even some restaurants have some applications where they actually display images of the kind of food they provide. So once you go there, you salivate. So it's through the design. So you trigger the emotion through the design. So as a designer, you need to actually get this kind of thinking, because you cannot just wake up and do things. you get. You need to first of all get the thinking. You need to first of all start thinking that way so that you can act that way. Like once you start thinking that way, then you will make sure that you design things that will trigger maybe an exact emotion that is relating to the emotion intended. So first and foremost, John asks themselves that question, and then he's like, maybe if I can figure out that kind of feeling, I can go ahead and evoke it. Yeah, if you can figure out the feeling you want, that you want to evoke from someone, like maybe a feeling of traveling to Africa. If I told you maybe you are in England or maybe you're in the USA, and someone in Africa wants to maybe design maybe an application to sort of like trigger your sort of like thought or emotions or feeling of coming to Africa. Maybe they will include photos of travel, wildlife, and all these interesting restaurants, hotels, that someone can actually visit once they come to Africa. So realize that through design, I know it's through finding out which kind of feelings you want to trigger, you can design towards that direction. And then, one, usually you need to first of all pick the aspects that will trigger that kind of feeling. So it's from figuring out the feeling, then you get the aspects that will trigger the feeling, then you combine the aspects to form a product to trigger a specific kind of feeling. So I think you can see it's most designers do not think this way. Like they want to they like jumping into Figma. Of course, we shall be jumping into Figma at the end of this workshop, but you have to first of all get this kind of this kind of thinking before jumping into Figma. So I realized that is what this specific episode was all about. Now, moving on to our next item under the agenda, I want to take you through our article of the week, the UX Chef's article of the week. So under this specific article, it was just a continuation, like it was just an explanation of this specific episode 17. And in that specific episode, talked about how you can actually, get motivated to continuously carry out user research. So let's actually just visit this specific article. The article was about how to stay motivated as you carry out user research. So it was just a continuation of episode 17 of the UX Twins. So let's just visit this specific article so that I can actually take you through this article, and then we shall dive into the book of the week. So for this article, let me just take you through. So I'll take you through the steps of how to stay motivated as you carry out user research. So the first step is you need to get a research method, because you cannot you cannot seek motivation without putting in the work, like, because that will be unfair to yourself. You can't just sit there and just start thinking about what to do, and then eventually it will do itself. No, you need to put in the work. So the first thing you need to do is to get a research method. And as creatives, we usually prefer research methods that that actually relate to us and what kind of people we are, because you cannot select the research method that is going to, that is going to drive you into making, like finding out, or like making mathematical formulas, and all that would maybe drive you into chemistry, chemical formulas, or maybe engineering. Yet you're a designer. Like, you don't have to go that far into like finding, or using research methods that are that rigorous, that are that difficult for you. In this specific article, we sort of like encourage you to use a research method called observation. So you realize that through observation, you can actually get to find visual hints. So after getting a research method, which is observation, we encourage you to always find visual hints, because as creatives, once you're carrying out research, it is better to actually observe, like to collect your data through observation. Just inviting the people you want to design for, interview them, and don't stop there. Go into the environments they actually always live within, like the office, their home. I'm not actually trying to encourage you to actually stalk your users, and to always be on their tail. No, you need to always first of all seek permission from them, and then let them know that you're carrying out research on them, and carry out that research in an authentic manner. Do not start, just ambushing them in their homes when they are busy. Schedule time with them. Observe them, how they are carrying out their day-to-day activities. How do they leave home? What time do they leave home? How do they reach the office? What time do they get back? If at all, maybe you want to design sort of these applications for mobile sort of like movement. For example, here we have like Safeboard, we have Uber. We also have other applications like Farasi. I've also seen others, but realize that if at all you'd want to build sort of like a mobile application to help people move here and there using maybe motorcycles or vehicles, you have to find out what time do they leave home, which roads do they use, even, you get, like, what time do they go back, or you need to find out, like, why do they use specific means of transport, because you might be wanting to actually create an application for vehicles, and yet the people in a specific area actually use motorcycles. So imagine wasting all that time. So you have to always get to know that you can use observation to just see and to collect information. The next thing is you need to get visual hints. For example, if at all you are scrolling through a specific website, a computer website, someone that you're competing with as a company, you can take screenshots of how they designed their button, of which animations they're using, and then you can, pick specific elements that can help you maybe design better or improve on their product, so that you can actually, sell better. That is not actually stealing, but it's actually improving on things. So always get visual hints through observation. So moving on, once you get the visual hints, the next step is actually very easy. You just need to throw the visual hints somewhere you can see them. For me, just like I told you, I have books here that are called scrapbooks, but they have like plain papers. So what I can do is I can either sketch or stick something there, or even write an entire paragraph, or maybe write a point. And then I can actually even pluck out the paper and then stick it somewhere on the wall, so that I can actually, be motivated to move on through these visual triggers from these visuals of actually pinned somewhere. So that was what this article was all about. You can, visit this specific article on Medium and then on our LinkedIn pages, and then you can actually read more. So moving on away from the article of the week, the next part I would want to take you through, which is the most interesting part of the day, is I'm going to give you an introduction to Figma. And this is actually part 2. And the reason as to why I'm dividing these specific introductions to these specific tools is to not overwhelm you, because it doesn't really like make much sense for me to just come and I just show you all the tools you need to use at once. I show you all the techniques that you need to use at once, and then just move on to another topic without you, truly understanding how you can manipulate this tool to your own advantage. So, not to actually manipulate, but to use. Don't quote me wrong. The main reason as to why I make these tutorials is to enable you to, have a different mindset towards design, especially if at all you're starting out. Because usually tutorials are there to show you like how to throw rectangles on the canvas, give them some shadows, give them some gradients, colors, without even explaining to you what exactly are those things they are throwing onto the canvas. So, as the UX chefs, we are here to always remind you that you can actually learn better by attending these workshops, by joining the community, and by following us on all our social media platforms. So, let's jump into an introduction to Figma, part 2. So, but to maybe rewind a little bit, in our previous workshop, I took you through part 1. In part 1, I actually talked about the true color of this tool called Figma. And its true color is like any other tool. It's like a pen. You can have like hundreds of pens, but trust me, what you use the pen to write, like what you write with that pen is what really matters. Like it's not really the pen. Of course, some pens look nice. Some have like features that are really intriguing. But eventually, what you what you use that pen for is what really matters. It's not how good it looks like. Of course, you can actually use a pen for decoration, but decoration is not it doesn't really bring in any value to you as as a designer. So take Figma as any other tool, like Illustrator, like Adobe InDesign, like Adobe Photoshop, like Sketch, InVision, any other tool that you can use to create, a website or a design for a website actually. Because a design for a website is not a website. You can create a design for a website in Microsoft Word or even Google Docs, and you develop it. You haven't gone into Figma. You can actually draw the design of a website on a wall, and you develop it, and it comes out very good without even touching Figma. So I'm not teaching you Figma so that you can like take it as the sole tool that you should use to learn how to design. Remember, design is all about making people feel in a certain way. If they do not feel in a certain way, you haven't truly designed, like you've done nothing. Of course, some people will tell you that design is all about providing value, but that is like the de facto reason as to why things are done, to provide value. But then user experience design is here to question and to make sure that that value is sort of like provided in a meaningful way, in a usable way, two, in a way that is understandable before even usage happens. People have to understand. If someone can't understand, they cannot use. And then, most importantly, the feeling that they'll get. So, moving on, the next point I took you through in our last workshop, when I was introducing Figma to you, I took you through the main areas and then the main tools in Figma, then the design blocks, and then lastly, I told you to focus on the bigger picture, not a tool. Now, if you want the video to part 1, like a video that is going to take you, if you want the link to that specific video, part 1, of introduction to Figma, just check in the description of a specific video, and then you'll get a link, and then you'll go watch that specific video, and then you can actually come back and then continue with this specific video. So moving on, today we shall explore these areas. One, UI element properties. Two, manipulating UI elements. Why these areas? Because just like I told you yesterday, which was Friday, I met with one of the community members in the UX Chefs community, and he told me that he wanted to actually improve his Webflow skills. And I realized that Webflow, although it's like Figma, it sort of like hides away like the important elements or like the important properties that would have showed you how UI elements are manipulated to form like the code that can be used to make them interactive. For example, like the CSS, and most importantly, the HTML. So Webflow hides that away, and it just helps you to place items here and there, and then manipulate them easily, just like how you would manipulate them in Figma. So I realized that for you to actually get to know the underlying way of how design elements are actually implemented, CSS wise, HTML wise, you need to first and foremost destructure your UI elements. So usually designers want to think of UI elements this way, like a whole button, a whole input field, a whole sort of like icon, a whole sort of like nav bar, whole section, a whole card. Usually designers like thinking in wholes, and it is not bad to actually think in wholes, but that thinking is not going to help you master how you can actually manipulate UI elements. To become very good at UI design, you need to first of all get to know which properties make up every UI element, and you'll find out that most of these properties are the same. You'll find out that a button, an input element, a card, they all have like text. They can have a border, they can have a fill, and they can have a shadow, which is this sort of like dark edge that you can see on this specific button. No, you have to understand that most elements share these properties, and as a designer, you need to start destructuring UI elements. You need to start destroying them. I'm not telling you to get a hammer and then you hit your computer screen so that you can destroy a specific button. For example, this button, like to hit your to hit your computer. But I'm trying to tell you to separate the properties that make up a specific button. Like, ask yourself, which properties make up a button? The text, border, fill, the shadow. We also have these corners that can either be sharp or curved. So I think you can see there are so many actually, so many properties. Moving on to other properties, you'll find out that this same button also has like a width and height. And to make things more interesting, you can manipulate these UI elements. For example, let's just use this specific file. I've created a new file here. Let's just use it for testing. UI destructuring. For testing UI destructuring. Now you have to understand that usually you can create a button from a rectangle. For example, I can have my rectangle here, and then I can add some text. Let me just add some text here, like buy, because we all want to buy something this year. I'm quite sure. Let me just make this really huge so that we can all see. Now, imagine I have such a nice button. Let me actually also make its edges curved. I think let me also make sure that I give it a very good sort of like background color or feel, and then I'll make sure that my text color is white. Now, usually designers want to think of buttons this way, like as a whole. But if I told you starting out with user experience design and UI design, you have to sort of start destructuring things out so that you can start making sure that you get to know which elements, so which properties make up a specific element. For example, if I'm to group this and I rename this as my button, usually people want to think of elements this way, like my button is a complete thing. But then they forget that a button is made up of these specific elements. For example, the border, you can actually select my button, and then I come here under the stroke, and then I can actually add a stroke, and I can actually even make it so a little bit bigger. I'm actually supposed to add a stroke on this specific rectangle. Now, as you can see, let me remove this stroke on my text, and then I can actually leave this specific stroke on my specific rectangle. So let me just also change that stroke fill so that you can actually be able to differentiate to differentiate this. Let me also, I think, make it of a different color so that you can be able to differentiate things a little bit easier. So as you can see, our button has got these properties under this properties panel, because once you select something, it shows you the properties it has. I took you to this properties panel in the previous video. So you realize that you need to start destructuring. And to destructure things, you just need to think of them this way. That these are the properties that actually make up this pattern. And there are actually more properties to this. You get, there are more properties to this. So the other properties for this specific button include its height and its width. So you realize that apart from these other properties that I've showed you here, there are these other properties, for example, height and width. And for these, you need to first of all select the button, and then you'll find the height right here, and then the width under this group specific area. So you can actually input another width. Let me just input another width. For example, 800. Click enter, and as you can see, the width stretches. Or you can actually use the cursor to make sure that you stretch this. So you can also manipulate the width by maybe entering another width there and then clicking enter, or you can actually manipulate it using your move tool or your cursor. So you have to just get to know that you need to think of UI elements this way. Why? Because if you think of the UI elements this way, then you'll be able to manipulate them in a way that actually makes you a better designer. It is actually better than maybe copying buttons from somewhere else without getting to know, how can I construct my own buttons? How can I construct my own input fields so that I can be able to be in control? And once you get to know the underlying logic of these UI elements, you will also be able to manipulate, these UI libraries. For example, Material UI, there's Anti-D. There are so many UI libraries that you can use, but it is through understanding these specific properties, these element properties, that will enable you to, become a better individual. Now, the next point is you can actually manipulate these UI elements, just like I've been showing you here. You can go ahead and actually give this button. This is it's actually a very weird button. Let's actually first put it back to our normal button that we had. That it's not weird. Let me just make sure I center that. So realize that I can actually change these properties. For example, Figma gives us a way of, first and foremost, making sure that we have, under the stroke here, we can actually make sure that our stroke can either be in the center of this specific rectangle, or it can be either in the center, or it can be inside, or it can be outside at the edge of this specific rectangle. For example, let me just zoom in here so that you can see that effect. Let me just select the rectangle and I change. Just look right here at the edge of this specific button. You're going to see that specific border actually, or stroke moving either inside or out, depending on what you've actually selected, or in the center of the edge. So you can actually change that, or you can also change each specific fill by using this area of the fill. You can actually add a code. For example, you can add a different code here to make sure that this specific stroke changes. And as you can see, it's actually changed to that specific code. And you can also use this specific color picker right here to pick a color from your other designs, or maybe within your specific working area. Or you can use this scroller to change the type of color, or you can use this inner scroller to change the sort of like saturation, or maybe the hue of this specific color. So you can change the stroke like that, and you can actually change the feel of this specific button by selecting that rectangle, and then using these scrollers to actually change this specific button to any color that you feel like. So just come right here under the fill and then select any other color that you want, depending on the brand you're designing for. So you can manipulate all the properties that I have showed you, the border, the fill, together with the shadow. So moving on, you have to understand that every UI element behaves that way. This way I've been explaining. For example, text, you can change the text, you can change the feel of this text. As you can see, you can give it any color that you want, depending on the brand you're working on, but make sure there is high contrast, because there are people who do not have sharp eyes like the rest of us. So you have to make sure that you have your buttons having very high contrast. So you can change the color of the text. You can even give this text another stroke and change the color of that stroke, and even change the magnitude of the stroke to maybe form something else, as you can see. So I can change this and make it any color that I want. I can change the fill to any color that I also want to make something else. So it is through understanding these properties that you will break the boundaries. For example, this can actually be a button for maybe a fashion website, or maybe any website. For example, a website for a restaurant, because it's a catchy button. But you can only do this by understanding the properties of the button. But if at all you copy a button from maybe a design system and you paste it somewhere, you'll find out that all of this was done for you, and you won't have like the morale to actually do this for yourself. But if at all you understand the underlying logic, you can destructure those UI elements and actually use them to your own advantage. And moving on, you'll find out that text, buttons, input fields, cards, icons, together with actually entire pages. Because if at all I'm to create like a frame around this, then that means that this actually becomes my page, like the frame. For example, we can have like maybe input elements here. I usually want to use an input element. And then this can actually be my page. And then as you can see, there are other properties to this specific page. For example, I can actually give it a border of its own, and then give it maybe its own color. So you can play around with all of these properties that I've actually taken you through to make sure that you create custom designs to match your brand and to serve your users better, and to even improve the type of experience they're actually getting. So moving on, you have to make sure that these UI elements are joined together. So from making sure that you destructure the UI elements and finding out the other properties and manipulating them and getting to know that all UI elements share these same properties, you can later on join these properties to make sure that you form complete pages. For example, I got this from Skilla. Skilla is our sort of like design that I usually use to explain to you these specific concepts, because it's actually a very simple design that can actually enable you to understand how to destructure your UI elements, to understand them better. So use this link to get this file, make a copy. It's actually my design, so feel free to actually make a copy and then manipulate it the way you want. You can delete, add your own colors, just like I've been showing you. Play around with the properties, and then you will be able to actually improve as a designer. So just make sure that you check out this specific design. It's a very simple design, nothing complicated. No fields, not too much color. It's just black and white plus some brown to just make sure that there are different states, but it's all literally just black and white. So, and there are different shades of brown. So make sure you just check out this file to enable you to play around with the elements. Don't mind about the layout. We shall get to that part in our next workshop. So guys, in our next workshop, I'm going to be taking you through auto layout. Like after arranging these elements, I think I'll first show you how to actually arrange elements in a logical manner to make sure the spacing is right, and to make sure I show you how to improve on this specific design, because I made this design like a long time ago, a couple of months ago. So and I think it's now even outdated. So and I think I'll be improving it to make sure that you can always visit this file and improve as a designer. So make sure that you attend our next workshops that I can take you through how to join these elements, and then add auto layout, and then prototype them so that you can interact with your specific elements. So and then we shall have other tutorials to have an in-depth explanation of all these concepts so that you can actually move on. So moving on, the last part I would want to take you through is the book of the week. So the book of the week, since we've been talking about user experience research and preaching the essence of doing research and finding out how your users actually feel, we thought that this book will relate to that information very well, because it is going to show you how you can start researching in a manner that does not discourage you, by doing just enough to motivate yourself to continue doing, and to also show you results, designer results, not results for chemical engineers or mathematicians. or physicists, but designer results. How do you design? How do you do designer research? So that is what this book is going to really show you. So I read this book, and it is all about showing you the steps that you need to take to make the research that is going to propel you in the right direction as a designer. So check out this specific book. Moving on, I would want to encourage you to stay connected as designers. You need to stay connected by one, joining the UX Chefs design community. Two, you can talk to an expert. You can talk to a creative that has got industry expertise and experience, so that they can actually help you out with what starting your journey as a designer, or improving, or to make a career choice by explaining to you the different disciplines. And then you can follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter so that you can stay up to date with the freshest user experience design insights in the industry today. So thank you so much for joining this workshop, and see you in the next workshop. Bye bye.